find a way forward?
One, the president needs to start by demonstrating goodwill, the general goodwill, by doing the bare minimum. If there are issues of corruption in government, the president has the power to hire and the fire. Let him do that. If there are things he can do without necessarily getting approvals of institutions, let him do that. And secondly, he has to break the audience into some targeted groups. If you want to meet the youthful people, go to the social media. If you want to meet the churches, go to NCCK. If you want to meet the media, talk to the media. If you want to meet the religious community, the business community, go to different business communities. And he must release his government to deal with this issue. The government, the public is wide. He may not be able to address all the issues as the head of state. He must first bring his government together, and he must ensure that the whole of government approach is involved in solving this crisis. For instance, we have people who listened to him on Sunday, but how many people are able to watch the mainstream media that he was speaking to? This is the time to even go to the local media stations and speak to the people. This is the time to organize county-based forums and speak to the stakeholders. If he is alone and he can manage this, let him do it. If he has the government that he can delegate, let him do it. But there seems to be a breakdown in communication between the president, between the government, and the people who are being governed. And that is why, as he speaks, nobody seems to be listening. And that tells him he has to change the approach of engaging Kenyans.
Nobody seems to be listening, but do you believe that this wave of activism could lead to substantial changes in government policy? The things that people are basically talking about, governance, accountability, political dynamics. Do you think that we will see a shift by taking to the streets and by continuing to say what you're saying is not enough, we're still not hearing you, you're still not hearing us? With this very aggressive and continuing wave of activism, are we likely to see any substantial change?
Yes, and we're already witnessing the substantial change, because for the first time the president has refused to assent to a bill passed by parliament, not on his own accord, but by bowing to the pressure of the electorate. For the first time, we have seen members of parliament apologizing to the nation and their constituents for voting in a particular way that was not inconsistent with the people that they represent. We are going to see a wave of change in the way government policy is developed, is implemented. We are going to see a fundamental change in the way government deals with corruption. What this generation has demonstrated to government is, well, we can ask you to act. If you don't act, we can act as well. In terms of getting the people's power and people's voices to be heard, we have succeeded as a country through this generation. However, my fear is that if this goes unmitigated, we are going to cause havoc and untold mystery in terms of economic and the social fabric of the nation. People are dying, lives are being lost, property is being destroyed, and we do not seem to have an end game to all these. This is a movement that is leaderless. This is a movement that is tribeless. You can't go back to your tribe and say, I am under attack. Even at your own home turf, people are demonstrating. You can't go back to the leader and say, please let us talk. They have no leader. So it calls for some high levels of wisdom and approach to tackle this movement.
There have been concerns that as these protests continue, there's the risk, of course, of loss of lives. Let's talk about the role of police and security officers in managing these demonstrations. Of course, we've seen use of disproportionate force against the protesters. We've seen incidents involving the firing of live ammunition, wielding of batons, deployment of tear gas, the purple rain, or is it the pink rain? You might call it purple or pink, depending on whether you're colorblind or not. But in terms of the role of security forces in managing these demonstrations, your assessment 3 weeks down the line in how they have handled this entire crisis, what would that be from where you're sitting as an observer?
As an observer, I think the security agencies have failed the nation. One, the primary role of the security agents is to protect the citizens, to protect life. and secondly is to protect property. You cannot end people's lives in the name of protecting property. It is life first, then property second. And we have seen police use excessive power, use live bullets, use tear gas guns, throwing them at demonstrators, and in the end, killing them. And this perhaps is where the government is getting it wrong in terms of approaching and dealing with the demonstrators. We are using the 18th century approach to the 21st century demonstrators. You know, previously, people would carry stones, people would mobilize by political heads. Today, these young people are mobilizing themselves through social media. They are releasing placards and leaflets on social media, telling them tomorrow we're occupying parliament, we're occupying CBD, and so forth. But the police are still deploying the same mechanism they used 2-3 years ago to quell demonstrators demonstrating today. Previously, they have been targeting the leaders. Today, they have no leader to get to target. And therefore, the first approach is let us educate the police on the best approach to dealing with the 21st century demonstrations, especially the Gen Z demonstrations. 2, 3, 4 days ago, a judge sitting in Malindi issued an order restraining the police officers from using tear gas, live bullets, and rubber bullets. What we are witnessing on our screens are the policemen using tear gas and doing everything that the judgment spoke against. And when the president spoke to the nation, he committed to rule or to stand with the rule of law. He kept speaking to the rule of law. And one of the demands by the Gen Z generation is adhere to the rule of law. If you cannot respect a simple court order telling you do not use rubber bullets, do not use live bullets, do not use tear gas, and in the open media space, we are seeing them using tear gas and so forth and so on. Where is the goodwill?
But, you know, Ken, we did see there from pictures in Kangemi, you know, while these protests started off as being largely peaceful, they seem to have taken a life of their own. And we must admit and accept that there are people who take advantage of such protests, criminals, petty, you know, looters and robbers and what have you. So while the police, you know, might argue on their own that they're ready to escort and provide security to the protesters, we have seen elements of persons that have taken advantage of these protests and actually thrown, you know, stones and hurled stones at the security organs that are on the ground. In such a situation, how then would the police, you know, be expected to
That is quite sad. It's quite sad. And the demonstrators, people on the streets should know that they are protected by law. But they lose that protection, immediately they turn violent or they arm themselves. The police is allowed to use reasonable force when he is endangered, when his life is in danger. And by throwing stones, you actually send a message that we are trying to endanger your life. If we get to you, we can do something else. However, this should be isolated cases. I do not believe that all demonstrators throughout the country are throwing stone and are using force. In the CBD, during the morning hours, people were very peaceful, even those who had not come to CBD with the intention to demonstrate. But we saw police dispersing them. And therefore, the police can also be very provocative to the demonstrators, just like the demonstrators can be very provocative to the police. We call upon both groups, the police officers and the demonstrators, to exercise restraint and do whatever they're doing within the confines of the law.
Yeah. And, you know, we also know that hundreds of demonstrators, perhaps not hundreds, but even from this ODM statement right now, according to the numbers that they're giving, is that apart from over 30 young Kenyans losing their lives, there are many more, upwards of 50 persons that have been reported missing or that have been abducted. So, you know, without knowing, you know, where they have gotten these numbers from or where they lay claim to these numbers, we do know that there are, in fact, people who have reported their loved ones missing. They could either have been arrested or, you know, they might have lost their lives and are still unaccounted for. So in terms of these illegal arrests or detention, and of course, we're also talking about persons that have sustained injuries. Let's first of all begin with the illegal arrests or detentions under the law. If at all you are picketing and find yourself behind bars, the recourse in terms of being the booking, first of all, the OB, and then again, how long should you be detained for before you're produced before court? Because the concern is that a lot of these people have not even been legal, have not been booked in most of these police stations, and therefore nobody knows where they are.
That is an illegality, and in fact, the right to the writ of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is a legal Latin term to mean produce the body whenever you're asked to produce. That is a right that is not limited by law. And once the police arrest you, they must do the honorable thing of identifying themselves, informing you that they are police officers on duty, informing you of the reason of arrest, and upon arrival at the police station, they need to book you and give you an OB number. This OB number must be brought to closure and you are released. And if you are not released within 24 hours, you must be produced before a court of competent jurisdiction. Even if they have not established a case against you, they are allowed by law to produce you before court and ask the court for an extension of time to continue holding you so that they can prepare the case against you. In this case, we've seen people who were abducted from their houses, from the streets. They have neither been booked in the occurrence book at the police stations, nor have they been produced before courts. And we saw the Chief Justice directing courts to sit even at odd hours to determine the applications for habeas corpus, which means the applications arising out of the abductions. And for the first time, we saw a court in Naivasha sit on a Sunday to address or to review the issue of the bond bail application that had been denied by the lower court. It's therefore illegal and unconstitutional to hold on to someone beyond 24 hours unless at the lapse of the 24 hours it is either on a weekend or a public holiday when the court is not sitting.
And of course we had the ODM party in its statement talking about the police oversight authority in Githurai, which of course the president, not the president, but the government in itself continues to remain mum about, because we have not yet had a clear word on what exactly happened there. So in terms of, the oversight authority investigating these mass killings, the extrajudicial killings, why as of now have we not had any word at all communicating to Kenyans what exactly is going on? There's a sense that people are losing their lives. There's a sense that people are being abducted illegally. There's a sense that there are police officers who are arresting persons without identifying themselves.
And with profound respect, my practice as an advocate tells me that the only thing that is independent about independent policing oversight authority is the word independent. IPOA runs like a government agency, and it is difficult to ask a government agency to investigate across the country over the past 10 years, and the IPOA has done nothing. And then most importantly is that IPOA runs like a toothless dog that can bark but cannot bite. IPOA does not have the prosecutorial powers. It does not have the powers beyond the. Therefore, them you take them to a report that this police officer has acted beyond their powers. They'll make that report. They'll do their investigations. They then make the report to the Directorate of Public Prosecutions to act. Another report is taken to the National Police Service Commission to act. So IPOA is a conveyor belt. On the president to instruct his security organs to seize